Bill?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
7:08. We have quorum. We're ready to go. And council meeting Tuesday, January 22nd, 7:08. Call to order. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you. And a second. Perfect. Any changes, additions, deletions? Peter?
Yes, there'll be some on-table materials with respect to item 8A2. And I would also like to ask that we add additional grounds for closing at item 14 under section 91A of the community charter, which is information about an individual appointed to act on behalf of the municipality or in a committee role, that sort of thing. As well as 91N, which is consideration as to whether or not an item ought to be discussed in closed meeting or in open meeting.
Perfect. Anybody else had two? Under the mayor, seemingly endless mayor report, if we could add 5, 6, 7. Item number 8, historical SOC, and item number 9, Inspector Terrence meeting.
Sorry, that was
8 and 9?
8A. We already have an 8.
5, 6, 7. I have a 7. 5. 5 and 2 I's is 7, isn't it? B and 2 I's.
8. There were 7 items here. You're adding 8 and you're adding 9?
8 and 9. So it's
sorry,
historical.
under item.
Under mayor.
8.
Oh, under
historical-
mayor, I'm sorry.
historical SOC.
Sorry, I was looking in the previous section.
Okay.
My apologies.
So it was
Nope.
historical,
Historical SOC. And
society, okay.
yes. Getting into the role, you know, doing all that abbreviation thing. And then number 9 is meeting inspector. Is it Terrence or Triance?
I think it's Triance.
Triance. Thank you. And I'll be brief on all that stuff.
Sorry, I do have one. The LGA conference verbal, I thought council were going to do one as well. Should we put that? I think you challenged us all to come to the first.
I'm going to give everybody a chance to say something now.
So do we want to put it under council, or do we just want to speak under the mayor? Does it need to be listed
Why
twice?
don't we put it under council? And Neville, if you could head that. Good. So we all shrink one in the rotation there, and we are good. All in favor? Nigs, hold your hand. All in favor? Good. Fine. We are done. So, which brings us to public participation, and there is no public participation, but we do have, going further down, a public delegation, which is Mr. Zordigan on road safety, parking lots, signage, and filming policy, and he is all ready to go.
First of all, I have to say Happy New Year, and really and congratulations for the new administration. I'm sure that it's going to be, you are working and serving better in Nigeria. I would like just to pass to my wife, which is my boss actually, and I'm sure that some of you are boss and the other have the boss at home, definitely. Just I let her talk, and because I have 10 minutes and she has 2 minutes to talk, and just she want to address some of her concern as a household or the resident of Lions Bay, and then I'm going to use the remaining balance of time. Thank you.
Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Farah Zurdigan. I live in Lower Kelvin Grove. I'm not going to take too much time. We have a few things on the agenda. Number 1 priority for us is the filming in Lions Bay. We're very familiar with the old bylaw, filming bylaw that was passed by the previous administration. And this recent filming in the Lower Kelvin Grove kind of triggered the fact that the entire filming bylaw has changed without any formal alert or notification to the Lower Kelvin Grove residents. It's been long time that we actually fought for not having filming in the Lower Calvin Grove because the impacts, and this is again, has nothing to do with Lions Bay, specifically talking about Lower Calvin Grove. Our house where it is directly impacted by all the noise and continuation of, like this last filming, I provided a lot of documentation to Mr. Mayor here, Mr. McLaughlin. And we just want to make sure that, get some sort of follow-up on that. Last I had discussion that if I was told that it has been addressed to the council, and I wanted to know like what are the action plans for changes to the filming bylaws. And my first question is, how did it even change? Obviously, there's only one family in the Lower Calvin Grove that benefit from filming. We're very much appreciate and understand that filming brings revenue to Lions Bay, but we want to make sure it's, everyone understand the impact to people who live in the Lower Calvin Grove, and the impact is not minimal. Impact is to, lack of sleep. Impact is to bylaw, for the noise bylaw that has not been complied. Impact is to, work hours that has not been complied, like starting at 6 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. the crew gets there. And this is going to continue. There's another houses building in the Lower Calvin Grove right on the beach. So obviously that house most likely going to benefit financially from filming in Lower Calvin Grove. So that would add to another household. So right now it's only one household who financially benefit from it. And of course the Lions Bay. We like the revenue for the Lions Bay, but at the same time, the problem and all the issues is under our watch. And we have no benefit for it except we have problems. So my only ask is I would like to know what has been done and what progress has been made regarding the filming bylaw. Is filming going to continue, or is it plan in place and a strategy in place to review the existing bylaw that was passed after 15 years fight with many Lower Calvin Grove residents, and I don't know who changed that, to be honest with you, but we don't have any visibility into the filming bylaw. So if someone can explain the filming bylaw, what it is today, and what are the progress made in order to make it back to the way it was before, that there was no filming in the Lower Calvin Grove.
Council, if I can speak on behalf of us and then defer to Peter. The change was made at the first council meeting in October. I know because I wasn't here, and that's the only way I remember the date. And I'm not sure how it came about, but the long story short, Farah, is that it changed from what it was to a more relaxed, and it passed, I believe, by the 4 council members who were in attendance. So that brings us to where you are now, which is where are we with looking at this. And I can say that I have asked the CAO to review our filming policy sometime in the spring when he has a moment, and to bring it back to council however he does. So I think that's the piece that I would have. Peter, unless you have anything more?
The only comment that I want to make is that as you've alluded to, Mayor McLaughlin, it is a policy. There's no bylaw. It's the filming policy, and so policies are, I'll say, simpler procedurally to change, and at the October 2018 council meeting, council did make an exception to the standing policy at the time, to allow the film application that was before council at that time. As the mayor has noted, staff have been tasked with bringing forward the filming policy for review, and council will have another look at that filming policy and decide which direction to go. As you've noted, I believe you provided the mayor with some materials with respect to your position on that, and they will be included in that review process. So that discussion, I expect, will happen this spring, as soon as we can make room for it on the agenda.
Peter, if I may suggest that when those discussions happen during those meetings, please specify, we live in residential area. When they do filming, especially this last filming, you feel like you live in a commercial area. This is not, we don't live in an area and we didn't buy a house to come in where people come in constantly and they do filming. If we allow filming in Lower Calvin, Lower Calvin Road is a beautiful place, so is Lions Bay. But the only problem is all the filming happens in the Lower Calvin Grove, and only very limited number of residents are impacted by filming. So if we're paying residential tax and our house is valued based on residential, not commercial, then I would say there is nothing for us except problems and headaches and lack of sleep and not being able to go to work next day and noise and from early in the morning and rubbish and trash in the parking and you name it, it's actually sad for us. It's only one person or one household would benefit financially from this. But again, that's also resident area. Why are we doing commercial work in a residential area? That's my question to the council.
Well, we'll address that when we see the thing, Peter's report, staff's report. And I would say that only one of the council lives within the geographical area, so I greatly appreciate the pictures that you had sent to us because it gives some flavor to what we're talking about here.
And one last thing is also about safety, if I may just discuss about the safety. During the filming, it was a lot of scene. I don't even know the name of the film, by the way. That's how much I'm not interested. It was actually several scenes that cars literally on the Lower Calvin Grove, such a narrow and a small road, they speed like crazy. And several times we realized that there were safety issue with pedestrians. Regardless of filming, I would highly suggest this is a very, the issue can be resolved with just a mirror in that corner of the curve that's coming down to the Lower Calvin Grove. Just put a mirror or something, because even for us, especially in dark when you come home, not seeing it, that's one thing that we put in those for road safety. It's just to install a mirror or something, that would be appreciated. If we can, because during the filming it was terrible, like a lot of speeding car in the Lower Calvin Grove because it's part of the scene. It happened.
Good. And Firing Cumbies, we'll give you 2 minutes to close,
Yeah.
but you're
Thank
on the
you.
clock.
Thank you very much.
Regarding filming, I'm talking with Peter, Jean. Peter, regarding filming, that as you said, reviewing, I have to say that if I invite you, all of you, to the restaurant with the expense of that gentleman, this is not fair. If the filming happened over there, in the expenses of our life, our peace, our tranquility, it's not okay, and it's not fair. In this regard, I'm going to give you something which is a poem from one of the philosophers and poets, which has been written on United Nations inside. That one shows that what does it mean about all of us. Welcome. Please. Sorry, I have just one. I would like to refer you to the one sentence before the last. I'm going to read all together. Human beings are members of a whole, not separate, not individual. A creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, I'm talking about my family and the other's family. Other members uneasy will remain. If someone will have a pain, the other never feel okay. If you have no sympathy for human pain, that I'm sure that you do have sympathy for that, the name of the human you cannot retain. the people that for the benefit of the pocket, bothering the other people. This is the last sentences. It's related to my neighbor or neighbors that they want to film me. We have to understand, if we are coming to the Lions Bay, why we have to sacrifice from 5 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night for what? Because someone get the benefit out of it? The money is not everything. Consideration is something that I'm talking about. And also, there was, after 14 years back and forth with 4 administration, we find out the right bylaw for filming. That, it coming from this one. That one, even though if it says that if one household is not agreed, they cannot have a filming. And then illegally they change it in last administration in the last minute for the favor of one person. Maybe there was a relation, kind of close relationship, change it to 10%. Even though that 10% is not applied. It doesn't apply right now. You know why? Because if we are 8 people, 8 households, if 10% of those, it's going to be at least 1 household. Am I right? 10% of 8, it's going to be even though less than 1 household. But we can say, if 1 household is not agreed, they shouldn't be filming.
And on that one, I'll say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that the sentences before the last is going to apply to all of you because it's applied.
And we'll make sure that...
I believe it.
And we'll make sure that you're aware of when the report comes forward, the recommendation.
Yes.
Okay?
And don't forget the asphalt in the road. I'm talking to the gentleman.
Okay.
It's not, it's one part.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's move on to the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Thank you, and a second. Thank you again. So we're reviewing the minutes of December the 18th. Any changes, amendments? Mr. Bean?
Just formatting on page 12 of 186. The top paragraph doesn't seem to be attached to anything in the numbering sequence.
Oh, it just starts with the paragraph at the top, yes.
Thank you so much.
12 of 8.
With your permission,
Thank you.
Maybe. If
Save
there
your
is
phone.
anyone to make a note in here, I would like to be presented and let me know in any filming meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Here,
All of
Peter.
you.
Just read.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to, I'll have to look at, I don't recall offhand where that was supposed to be or what number it was, or if it was something that, my recollection is that.
Well, it just kind of flowed from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it belongs there at all, is my concern. I know we had the discussion, just not sure that we had it at that point in time, but.
I'm not either.
But
okay.
to address it here and now, we could just assign it C3,
Let's do that.
and
Is that fine, Councilor
Yes,
Bain?
sure.
Just give it a number. Thank you. Good catch. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Neville?
On item 11, the third bullet down, the very last part of that sentence, when it refers to what I said, I think it would be more accurate if we could change it to read, and the very last part, and his company may do so again. It implies that I may, and I think I made it clear I had no intention of doing so.
So you would like, just to repeat, so after we go wood fiber LNG,
Yeah, or his company has worked with him in the past and may do so again, and his company may do so again.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong item here. Good bullet.
the rookie's getting on his butt tonight.
You with us yet?
Okay, one more time, Neville, after wood fiber LNG.
Yeah,
Neville?
After Wood Fibre Energy or his company has worked with them in the past and his company may do so again. It implies that I may be working for them,
There we go.
which is not what I said in my intent. Does that make sense?
But it says, previously it says matters dealing with wood fiber LNG as he or his company. Are we striking the as he? Or should that simply say as his company?
As his company.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay.
Okay, and for me, anybody else? I have one change, and that's on page 11 of 186, where it's mayor, and I'll give this to you, Peter. And starting with the second sentence, Mayor McLaughlin advised that the school would like to, and I'd like it to go, continue to stay open. And then if we can continue with, and that council should do some work in promoting the school to families, starting with the Peace in the Village update period, and strike the rest. Okay, we're good on that. Gone. Any changes? Jamie, that was at hand? Was
Nope,
that-
sorry.
Okay, don't do that again. All right, all in favor of the changes, accept the amended minutes. A first, a second, thank you. We're all in approval? Yes, good. Special meeting, who could forget January the 4th? Who could believe it was more than a month ago when we had our last full meeting? There you go. January the 4th, the minutes are before us. A motion to review the minutes. Thank you. Second, perfect. Any changes to these minutes? Changes, amendments? I have none. Anybody else? Any discussion on them? We're good. All in favor of the minutes as they are? Good. Carried. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. I had nothing I was going to bring forward. Anybody else?
I had one item on the discussion about the boys on the highway and the speed. It was mentioned about the highway was meant to be repaved, and we believe every 5 years. Someone else, I brought that up because somebody mentioned it to me, and another resident actually sent me an email on the same matter and asked the same question. So can we take an action to find out if that's true, what the timing is, and where we would stand? The statement I've been told is that they agreed to do the sound paving or whatever that quiet asphalt is at some time period, potentially 5 years, and it's never been redone. And I've got it from two independent people now, so I guess it was in there somewhere.
That would be very good to know. So then we could use that as a carry forward item for Peter, which would be the unfinished business. And that'll be whatever number that is. Anything else? Nope. All in favor of the minutes then? Thank you. Or the unfinished business, we're all done with that. Good. And Peter, we could, with your green light, we could leapfrog across to the grants application so we can go home and watch a game show, or we could just run through the thing, their encroachment thing.
Talking about following.
I'm sure I read that there was an encroachment thing in here.
Yeah, there is.
Good.
There's an encroachment application.
Yes. Could we accelerate that?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Game shows are on, it's, what's on at 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go. Is that okay if we jump?
yeah, to item 12A.
Item 12A, if that's fine with everybody. Anybody who dissents, raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so this is yours, Peter.
Okay, I apologize because I did receive some updated drawings that were to be attached. Oh, you got that?
These are from the landscape architect, and this is from the geotech.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I'm gonna just,
It looks very similar.
it's very similar to what was previously scoped out, except that now there are 3 separate retaining walls to reduce the height of each one. I believe to 1.2 meters, or something like that. The property line had been believed originally to be right here, in line with the hydro pole, but in fact, the property line is right below the first wall. So walls 2 and 3, as we go down the slope, would actually be on village property within our road right of way. So they would require an encroachment agreement. There is also a geotechnical review of the site that I read today. And Mr. Jaffer has created a, I don't have it, sorry, but just basically a hatched diagram showing the license area under the encroachment agreement, which is simply the area from, that encompasses the second and the middle and the bottom wall. So they would be attached, those documents would be attached to the draft encroachment agreement that you see within the materials at page 169 of 186. Essentially, the geotech report advises that the walls would assist in terms of the stability of the slope. And at the top of the slope, within the flat area between the top wall and the house, there is a septic field. And in the interim, some rocks have been placed in order to stabilize the slope to protect the septic field. So, as I understand it, the walls, the middle and the bottom walls would make sense logistically in terms of stability and supporting the slope. And the recommendation from staff is that the application be approved. We did note that the water service for the house runs up the driveway or the other side of the driveway, so there's no concern about, that we initially had, about water service running underneath these rock walls. That's not the case. The area at the bottom of the bottom wall is a flat gravel area that is to be maintained as such. So staff recommendation is for approval.
Good. So the recommendation is, which I'll put forward, that the municipality enter into an encroachment agreement with the owners of 253 Bayview Road in substantially the same format as the draft agreement attached to this report, and 2, that the CAO and mayor be authorized to execute the agreement. To the seconder. Thank you. And any discussion?
Just a question. Would this interfere with drainage at all?
No, there's no drainage on that side of the street. There are portions that have been piped in, but they're not functioning properly.
They're not functioning.
Correct. Yeah.
But should there be drainage there? Was there likely that we're going to want drainage there in the future?
And that's part of the reason why we stipulated that bottom level be flat gravel and maintained gravel, so that we could, if we need to in the future, install a proper drainage system there. So there's plenty of room there at the base of their retaining walls.
Okay. So the question is, these sketches that we have in here say by geotechnical engineer. So is there a sealed geotechnical design for this?
Those are actually not by the geotech, they're by the landscape architect.
Okay.
So we had a geotech look at the stabilization, and we had with our contractor Norm here, we had a proper architect draw it up for us to see what it was going to look like. And our only mistake was the property line, we thought it was a little bit further back.
And we have reviewed the geotechnical report, so, and everything looks good.
So there is a geotechnical
Correct.
design by professional geotechnical.
It's a report, not a design, it's a report that talks about the wall and describes how it's to be constructed in the placement. And that is a stamped letter.
And the reason my concern is pictures like this don't often end up how it actually looks, right?
Correct.
There's a neighbouring property that I'm not equating the two by any means, but I'm not sure what that looked like in the picture.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that we have a solid design.
We have an updated design, updated sketch by the landscape architect that was reviewed by the geotechnical. Pass that down.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my only other concern is we've had much talk about taking back our boulevards and about what we might need to do in the future, and about not allowing encroachment in areas that we think we might need ditching. And we keep talking about that,
Correct.
but I feel we keep sort of going down the same path.
So,
So if we understood that there was going to be some ditching here, this could end up being a heck of a long culvert to take care of this flat area, and then we are not for it.
no, it can be an open ditch. There's,
But there's enough space, do you know?
that's why we requested that open space be left. So there's plenty of room there. It's a very wide boulevard.
Can I say something there?
Yep.
About 15 years ago, we paved the village to put a pipe through,
Right.
so, and then cover it with gravel. So the water, as far as I know, is flowing through the pipe. So,
Oh,
The
so there's a
culvert
culvert.
was installed.
So that's,
So there is a culvert.
There you
so
go.
it's village-sized culvert too,
yeah, which we.
one would presume.
So, you know.
Okay, don't answer
Don't know if
that.
it was done to, well, what standard it was done to, but, yeah. And that's typical. There's pipe buried all over the place that the village doesn't know currently where it is or what condition it's in. So.
Okay.
But that area in front, the flat area, is more than enough to excavate, repair, replace, or even open it back up, daylight it, so.
So just want to make sure we're comfortable that we're not growing on this ongoing issues that we have and adding another one to it. Comfortable with that. Okay.
The intent here is to keep our options open.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure we do. Okay, when in fact there's a culvert and we get changes, yes. Okay. So this is the normal encroachment bylaw.
This is standard
Procedure?
encroachment agreement?
Yeah, this is what happens. Comes
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, unfortunately, they come on short notice, when people realize at the last moment that, oops, I'm on village land.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. We have two standard agreements that we use. One is this agreement, the encroachment agreement with the homeowner. The other standard agreement that we have is where there are significant materials that are being placed on village property that where we feel it's in the village's best interest to have a registered covenant on title. And then we have a section 219 covenant agreement that we have the homeowner sign, which is registered in the land title office. That wasn't necessary here because of the fact that we do have the additional space at the bottom to address any concerns that we have in the future or any options that we may wish to exercise in the future.
Okay.
Norm, any questions? We can start with Fred and you can warm up.
No, I'm just curious about this culvert, so we don't really have a record that it's under the ground there. We suspect it's there.
That's the first I've heard, and
Right, so it would be good to
staff
catalog
word
that somehow.
Yeah, so just upstream of that, there isn't a culvert.
Okay,
It's
just a ditch.
ditch and it's buried. So now that we're aware of that, we'll put it down on our drawings,
Right.
but yeah.
So during course of construction, we're concerned about it collapsing, if heavy excavation equipment travels over it, is that a concern?
That's a concern. Was it corrugated metal? Was it PVC? We don't know. Is the bottom in any good condition?
It's
What
middle,
size was it?
If it was middle, it's probably rusted.
Yeah, so we don't have any records of those.
I think it'd be
Could
fair
I
to say
suggest-
15 years ago was a kinder and gentler time, and who knows?
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate that maybe we have a site inspection to make sure we've got all of it lined up in case we don't? In case we create a situation and revisit it?
Again, there is quite a bit of flat space there, more than enough for a culvert and an open ditch. And that's by design. That's why we wanted that space left untouched.
So if we have any inclination to do a study or examine drainage on that side of Bayview at any point, we have the ability to access that land in front of this wall.
Norm, you want to double down here?
Nope, not at all. I
We're
just,
good?
our issues with water management keep coming up to the surface. So it's just worth just raising it as a flag.
Good.
So
Jamie, you're the most technical person here. Any questions?
I am just soaking in all of the knowledge that I.
You can't get enough about
Yes.
pipes, that's for sure. Fred?
Nope, all questions
Good.
answered. You know, if I can just add to that, because the excavator's up there already, and, you know, he's a local contractor that's doing the work up there, he's, you might even know him, he's quite well versed in his trade. And so during that course of construction, that lower part, that concern that you have as far as the weight and crushing that pipe, whatever it is, whether it's PVC or it's galvanized pipe, whatever is below, we can make a note for ourselves to relay that to the contractor to check on that for your information and our information.
Yeah, I think that
Well, we'll leave that for the works to stop by one day. Okay, thank you for your generous offer. I'm going to call a motion on this, unless there's any more discussion, shoot your hand up now. All right, so the motion is, as I've read, we've had our discussion. All in favor? It's unanimous. We're done. Thank you. And Karen, I hope it's a lovely project. It goes on budget. There we go.
It's going to be beautiful.
And the media that you did in the drawings, beautiful. Thank you. All right, back on schedule.
Sorry, just one moment.
Yep.
Did you want these back? Lou?
You can have them, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, I have more copies of them. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's nice to see your new office, really, your meeting space up here. Nice doors you got.
When did we do those? Thanks, guys.
All right, so leaping to the bottom of the front page of the agenda, the unfinished business. So, CAO, you're going to deal with this, so I guess we can strike this, eh?
So my update is simply that I'm waiting on the manager of administrative services for the district of North Vancouver to circulate the new agreement.
Leave it on?
If you like.
Nope. It's in process.
Okay.
Done, off. And I happen to know that number 63, number 64, number 65, and number 66 are done, so they're a strike as well, unless there's any disagreement.
No, and just a heads up confirmation to council that the climate change mitigation delegation from West Coast Environmental Law will take place on March 5th.
Good, thank you. So we are done on that. So moving to item number 8, and there's the CAO, recorder and speaker. This should be good.
So just a brief update here. I did speak further with someone from contract services at the RCMP with respect to how this program works, and was advised that essentially what we get under this program, where we can have a supplementary police officer, full officer, working on our own agenda as directed, our own schedule, lots of flexibility there, is we get Canada's 30% portion for free. What we pay is the province's 70% portion. So that means if we put down $40,000, if that's our budget, just for example, we're getting, that's the 70% portion of the province, so really what we're getting is about $57,000 worth of police services. So we're leveraging our 40,000 to get 57,000 under the way that this works. It's a little bit different than what I thought. Based on the initial conversations that we had, I thought it was more of a 50-50 kind of proposition. And so at this point, what we're waiting on now is for the Squamish RCMP detachment commander to provide us with an indication of how many hours that budget would buy us, so that we can figure out cost per hour, we can figure out what that might look like in terms of how we would use that resource, how we would schedule it, how we, whether it's a mid-May to mid-September, and we just concentrate all the hours during that period, whether we spread it out, how we would want to use it so that council can see what that might look like and determine whether or not that's good bang for our buck, and before approving that kind of an expenditure as part of the budget. And we'll be meeting with Inspector Triance on February 5th when we go listen to their strategic plan presentation in Squamish. And so that's it for now.
Thank you.
Moving on, or
New
any
Horizons.
questions?
Got a second chance when I bring up the coffers too.
Okay. So I'll pass around these on-table materials.
Thank you.
With respect to this matter. So what this is, I had a call and an email from Jill Lawler at West Vancouver, who is working on this project along with a number of other organizations. If you turn to the second to last page with the colors, you'll see the various organizations that are under the heading Team of Collaborators. So we've got District West Vancouver, North Shore Multicultural Society, Nurse Next Door, West Vancouver Memorial Library, Seashell Seniors Activity Center. Well, you can read them all off there. There's the Regional District on the Sunshine Coast. Ourselves are listed there. I indicated that at first blush this would appear to be a good program. It entails basically a grant application by the so-called collective in order to pursue the objectives of the program, which is to reduce loneliness for seniors and provide services, a variety of services in different manners, ranging from mobile services to enhancing services over the internet for seniors, and identifying need and connecting communities. So there's a number of objectives and programs that would be pursued. Some of them are provided in greater detail on that colored page near the end. The last page of the handout is an example of a letter of intent that was provided for this objective by Vancouver Coastal Health. There was a couple others that were in the package, but I thought this was sufficient to give an idea. So we would be, if council supports this initiative, then we would also be writing a similar letter to support the initiative, namely a letter of intent to support. The funds that are being applied for are in the order of $1 million, spread out over 5 years. There is no funding request being made of the municipality. This is all 100% grant funding. So it looked like a good program and a good initiative, and staff is recommending that council consider supporting this.
Good, so if I was to phrase a resolution, it would be to support the New Horizons services that we've seen on table, and for the CAO to pursue going ahead. That's vague enough.
To provide a letter of support.
Provide a letter of support, thank you. Since you're the recorder, I know you have that accurately. Can I have a motion? Thank you, Jamie, and I'll do the second on that one. Any discussion on this? Yes, Fred? Fred, Neville, put it out.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, just practically, how would this be exercised in Lions Bay?
I think some of the services are mobile services where they would come out and provide services in-home
Okay.
to seniors in Lions Bay.
In Lions Bay?
Yeah.
What's the source of the funding? Like, where is the money coming from?
Doesn't say the feds of the province or the
Yeah,
health
I'm not-
ministry.
I'm not 100% sure on that, actually.
So
Sort of,
don't we have a senior social circle?
We do.
Yeah.
Yes, but that may not reach every person in the
No,
village.
I guess what I'm asking is there a way to pull them into this?
Yes. So I suggested that to Jill, and she said, great idea. I
Okay.
just haven't had a chance to bring it up with
Okay.
Lee or any of the other seniors.
Because,
But yes, my intent would be to engage them, to become part of this
Okay.
and delve into it.
That was the question I was going to ask. Looking at the list of the other groups,
Mhm.
you can always find out,
Yeah.
hey, ours isn't there, right?
As soon as I saw that, that was a question I asked too.
Okay, that was the only question I had.
Any other questions?
It's all good stuff.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Good to go. Good luck with that, Peter. Thanks for bringing it forward. And you're next up again.
Okay. So this item here, page 19, there are materials provided by Therese Mickelson, who is the consultant that we used for the infrastructure referendum loan authorization financing bylaw. And she's provided a quote for council in terms of media training, which we had talked about pursuing. And so this is basically what it would look like. And I'm open to your questions. Okay.
Sure. This one's, this media training has been done before. Have any of the people here attended this before?
Not during my tenure.
Not that I know of. This is the lady that led the infrastructure marketing campaign for us.
Yeah.
Seemed extremely qualified and gave very good advice, and ultimately they produced a right result.
Okay. Well, I see it's going, it's, staff, various council, mayor, everyone's going to be going, so I was just wondering if anyone had done it before. We haven't done this course before, but have done some, you have?
I have in West Van. So in West Van, as superintendents, lower level management staff, all receive media training because we're often, pictured on the news talking about flooding, snow removal, that sort of stuff. So it's a highly worthwhile exercise. It's very interesting.
There's no
what's
increase in cost for staff to take part as well on the group part of it.
No, I wasn't questioning whether staff should be part of it. It was more a question of, sorry, when I first read it, I thought maybe everyone had done it except a few of us.
No.
So we haven't done it before.
No.
Okay.
And I haven't done it previously at all.
Or anything similar.
sorry.
Carry on. No, we got that one.
I think this is a great idea, and I'm all in favor of it, and I think in the long run, it potentially could cost us a lot more than it's costing because of, if you say something inappropriately, you'll pay for it, like we'll pay for it. So I get that, and I think for the good name of the village and everything, it's a good defense for us. I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit of sticker shock on this one. I mean, $1,500 for a half-day session and $950 for a 2-hour. Is this normal? It seems awfully expensive.
I couldn't tell you if how it compares to others, so I didn't go out for 3 quotes. I can do that.
How much time are you gonna
So-
spend doing that?
Well, I would pick
This
two.
is
I would pick
$1,500
two.
gone in 20 minutes.
I would pick 2 consultants that I'm familiar with and request a quote for media training. Yeah.
And then there's a billing rate of $130 an hour if she has to do any admin functions over and above this. It's pretty high price admin help, $130 an hour. My other question, and maybe it's along the same lines as always, personally, we haven't quite got to where's all the budget and what do we spend on budget and what do we spend on training and who goes and how much budget do we have and how does this fit into that thing? As it's been, someone pointed out to me, $2,500, that's like one person's taxes for the village. The ghost account, the part that goes to the general is spent. Is it lots of these small incremental things? I personally don't know that where the budget is, we haven't got to. Pam's she's obviously diligently working away and seems to be ahead of the schedule. But personally, it doesn't need to be thought of in what else are we going to spend on budgets, or do we just start approving things incrementally?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an urgency for it, I guess, is part of the question. I've done nothing necessarily like this, but I've been exposed to that in the kind of corporate worlds. And there was a session we saw in the LGLA, which granted was only, was that an hour and a bit session?
It was almost 2 hours.
2-hour session.
It was.
And it gave us some good pointers.
Yeah.
Is it urgent, or do we look at it as part of our budget? What would we do?
Well, an option would be we could add it to the supplemental list, like we have, I do the base budget, and then we say these are the supplementals, things we're considering, and then I take your point, you could look at it and compare to other things we're asking for and assign a priority to it.
Is
And I
it
could
Would be an
also-
someone
option,
else to get
and get
it?
additional quotes.
I could get a couple of additional quotes as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, that could be a good approach.
I would like some media training. The cost, to your point, Neville, is what it is, and I can't compare it. And but I think that for me, better than I thought it would be, and I'm getting coaching from my other mayor colleagues. But I think for me, however we go, I certainly need to get split. I need the help. And I hate to be in a position where, and I thought that the guy from Peak Communications was excellent at the local government conference, but I think he was speaking to a room of 160, and I would prefer the one-on-one for that one opportunity 3.5 years from now when I'm caught off guard and say something that sees us in the paper for 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I can accept that. I mean, I didn't intend to speak to the press, but I don't need to. I'm
Yeah.
self-employed to do
So,
so. Maybe that's separation.
So I think the sense here, if I can get it, sure.
Sorry.
Yep.
I just wanted to insert one other suggestion, and that is I may be able to get a sense of cost comparisons from speaking with other CAOs. So even without getting
Yep.
quotes, to provide some feedback.
Well, I guess that's the key point for me. It costs what it costs, if that's what it costs. But if this is a high-end
Right.
price, then do we need the Rolls Royce when?
Yeah.
I'm speaking strictly from ignorance here. What's wrong with having some attention around issues that's uncomfortable? If you're saying truthful things and it happens to generate some media or negative press, I mean, that's typically how things get resolved. They don't always get resolved in a comfortable way. So what is it we're trying to protect ourselves from is what I'm
The
asking.
concern was misspeaking. I think it's not so much talking, if I could speak, it's not talking about an uncomfortable subject. It's just, sometimes without proper media training, you could say something inappropriate. And I don't want to.
Well, you're
we don't have
exactly
an
right. I
audience
mean,
out
that was,
there.
again, that was a big part of the the lecturer at the local government conference. It was, everything's always recorded, nothing's off the record. You should be careful, you should be prepared, and a variety of other things. And I mean, I could, if I had a session, I could probably name a half dozen topics right off the top that I'd like a little coaching on before. I think Peter's been a very good coach before, and former Mayor Burr as well too. But there's times when I will get a call in the middle of nowhere, or you will too. I think we've had that talk already. So I kind of see the two things here. I mean, there's, I guess, unless, well, I don't want to waste Peter's time if this is not something we want to do.
Well, if I can just note that, dealing with media is a skill that elected officials ought to have some competence in. The more the better. It's not only understanding what they're asking you. There may be sort of underlying things that they're trying to get at, that they might slant their story in a certain way regardless of what you say. So trying to recognize, or being able to recognize when that's happening, as well as knowing and understanding what your own objective is in terms of what kind of a message we want to get out, or you want to get out on behalf of the village. In order to achieve those objectives, there are skills and ways in which you as an elected official can get the point across to hammer home. Sometimes it's repetition. You end up saying the same thing a couple of different ways, but you're trying to get your point across as opposed to falling into something that they want you to talk about that might not be within the realm of something you can talk about freely. Anyway, those are just a few thoughts, things that I've picked up along the way, but I think there's definitely value in doing it. I think it's just a case of determining and being comfortable with the price being a good value, or if it's not, finding one that is.
Well, if I could just piggyback on that. One thing I think you have to come to the realization is the media is not innocent. They come up asking what they pretend to have an innocent question, and you may in good faith want to cooperate, but they're working to their agenda. And I think you really do need to have the training to recognize what media's agenda is in a variety of different situations. Like, I don't have it in general stuff, but the media training I've had with emergency services is they're always looking to make headlines. They want to make it a big story so that they can sell more papers or have more airtime. I know this is a very cynical way of looking at it, but it's true. You've got to accept that it's not a nice place out there when the media shows up and they'll buddy up to you and try and get you to say something off the record, which is absolutely not done. Anyhow, I guess a long story short on this is, I think the training is essential for any of us representing the community for the sake of the community. But my only concern was the price seemed rather high for it, being a nuts and bolts guy. I think, if I was running an excavator, and you're going to be charging your $350, $400 an hour, I understand why the cost is so high, because machinery is expensive to maintain. You've got to do all your maintenance and repair. Fuel is the cheap part. When somebody comes out and puts on a half-day course for $1,500, I think, where's the overhead? I just feel uncomfortable with it. I'm not saying she's not worth it. I don't know her well enough. Maybe that's the price we have to pay. I don't know. It's just, it jumped off the page.
All right.
That's all.
All right, gentlemen, Jamie and Pam, I think here what we'll do is we'll receive this recommendation, Peter, and ask that you go back and do some comparatives or thoughts. I don't know that it needs, I think we're capable of making this. I don't think it needs to go to the supplemental budget. And the training, I'm sure, can be done in the next few months. It's fine. Are you good with that?
Yep.
Good, thank you. Okay, moving briskly along, and we have a long evening here, so let's power through this. So Pam, I'm sure you are up next, page 27.
Yes, I am.
You got all the colorful pages.
So this is a report that comes to council every year, and it comes from our auditors, BDO Canada, and it's a part of the audit because they really are auditing on behalf of council. So this is actually a report to council, and they just asked that council receive it, so I present it at a council meeting. And basically it's a long document, but it outlines how they will be doing the audit, their process, what their materiality is, talk about management points they found in prior years. And usually how I present it is I just see if anyone has any questions about it. The audit this year will be held from April 15th to April 18th. BDO actually comes into our offices and does our year-end audit with the result that we have audited financial statements in time for the community charter deadline. So is there any
Well, I see
questions?
that their 70,000 materiality number rather matches what the speaker and the sergeant at arms think is material too, I guess.
Yeah, on that note, I don't know if anyone read it in detail. The materiality is 70,000. That's a really important number. And what that means is when they do the audit, sometimes they will find small errors. No, they're not really errors, but things they want to be restated. And we usually do restate them. Some things we're not able to restate. So what that means, if they were to find errors more than $70,000, then they can't give an unqualified opinion. So what they're saying is if there were errors under $70,000 and they weren't corrected, they could still say that the financial statements accurately represented the financial position of the company. So obviously the larger the company and the larger the revenues, the higher the materiality level. And the other materiality of 52,500, it's 75% of that number. And a lot of their testing is done based on statistics. So that's the level they have to determine how much testing they'll do of our processes so that they can rely on our numbers, because they don't check every single thing we do. They take samples of our checks and things like that. And that's what that number's for. It's a little technical, but there's actually a lot of statistics involved in auditing.
Thank you. I was curious about that.
Okay.
Do they typically issue sort of corrective actions or actions in any way?
Well, they don't, as you'll see from this, they're not there to find fraud, but if they discover fraud, then obviously they will report it. And they do look at our internal controls. So we get something called a management letter, and a copy of last year's management letter is in here. They didn't find any management points. And then we just say what our corrective action would be. Like in the past, because we're so small, we struggle with what's called segregation of duty. In a larger operation, like the bank statements would be done by several different people. So what we call our compensating control is our municipal accountant does the bank rec. But because I also sign, she can sign checks and I can sign checks, I do the bank rec, which is a bit unusual, but it's for that separation. But we have the bank recs signed off by the CAO, and then the fire bank recs are signed off by Chief Oliver, just to have that separate step. So that was something they asked for a couple of years ago. They just said that maybe a separate additional control could be that the bank recs be signed off, so we implement that. And then a few years ago, they discovered just some of the timesheets got missed with approval, so we would approve that. But that is part of the process. They look to see that, because they have to be able to rely on the numbers that are in our general ledger, and a big part of that is making sure we have controls and that we are accounting for things properly. So it is an important thing that they check.
Do we pay for this?
Yes.
How much does this cost us?
It's usually, we do an interim audit and then the year-end audit, we get the financial statements. It's about $30,000 to $32,000 a year.
Do we have to do it every year?
Oh, yes, it's a requirement. We have to have audited financial statements. It's a requirement of the community charter.
Our
And they
auditor,
actually have a
That
deadline.
price tag.
our auditor probably does 80% of the municipalities in Western Canada.
They're done by really just two firms, BDO and KPMG. Because believe it or not, they don't have huge audit, like it is a large number, I'm not diminishing it, but coming from the public sector, the audit fees in the private sector, are a lot higher. They are conscious that tax dollars are paying for this, but it is a big expense. It is a lot of work. They have 3 to 4 staff out here for a week, and then for the interim audit, they have about 2 staff, plus we have the partner. Comes out for a couple of days. We will have, if you remember from last year, he will come and present the financial statements at a council meeting.
And of course, it doesn't impact your workload at all.
No, not at all.
And they don't, in the management letters, they don't mince words either. Not in the last year, was there an issue, but there was one a couple of years ago, which to be a little bit vague about it, was some internal treatments by one of the units, which our management team has corrected and has control of, and it's been signed off by the auditors. So they're close to the ground.
The other thing we do, I started doing this when I started working, I actually completely prepare the financial statements, and they come in and audit completed financial statements, so that does help with the fee a bit. In the past, and for some smaller municipalities, the auditors come in and actually have to prepare the financial statements as well. So they come in to do their audit, and they're only in here for four or 5 days, because I give them a finished product and then they audit that, rather than preparing the finished product and then auditing it. But it's a lot of money.
If it helps, a couple of years ago, they complimented the village on how well prepared, not a couple of years, was it a year ago? How well prepared we were, and I think that does keep the cost down. So, hats off to Pam. I'm number one.
All right, well, unless anybody's hand shoots up, can I have a motion to receive the report from the CFO? Thank you. Second. Any more discussion? Going. Jamie? If it's not engineering, I know the number columns. There you go. All in favor? Thank you. Received. Mr. CAO, partnership agreement.
Oh, no, we have,
Who could
water,
forget?
sewer, solid
Who could
waste
forget
budgets.
sewer and solid waste?
The most important part of this
You know,
meeting.
I went to
Finally,
I went to a Metro meeting, and their director spoke with such passion about solid waste that it was inspiring.
Brings tears to the eyes.
So this will be, I guess, the first budget 2 of our councillors are seeing. Generally, this is kind of the format I do. It's similar to the format we see for the quarterly review. I've worked on this closely with our public works manager and our municipal accountant. So this is our kind of first draft of the budget. We've gone through, the big component is the labor. So we do a full labor model, and which is very, very accurate. We just, because we have a union agreement, we know what the wages are going to be. And then in terms of, the public works salaries, they're allocated, and we try to base the allocation on the actual salaries. So a percentage of the salaries goes to sewer, a percent goes to water, and then the rest go to parks and public works. But that's a big component of this budget, because salaries and benefits are one of the largest expenses. So that's a number we really drill down to. And the only thing that might be off a bit is the allocation. I mean, we do our best guess to, based on historical numbers, what to allocate to the different funds. But we do need to allocate that salary to the different funds, because there's a different form of revenue coming in. We need that number to properly determine what the water fees should be and what the sewer fees should be.
Do the work staff code their timesheets that allowed you to do that?
They
Yes.
do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the annual report, you'll see a breakdown of the hours that they spend and where they spend them.
This is an area of significant improvement in my 3 terms, where, different time that was not the case now, and I think for the last several years we're extremely accurate now.
And the only other thing I'll point out, I have said year-to-date actual 2018, and there still are, of course, invoices to come in. We generally, it takes a month to get the invoices in, so we won't be firming up that number probably until sometime in February.
So what was the cutoff for this report?
Well, this is the 2019 budget, but the 2018 numbers, it is December 31st. But what I'm just saying, the reason I said year-to-date actual is they're not final numbers yet. I mean, going back to the audit, they'll be final when we do the audit, but we're still getting in. It's usually by the end of January. It takes to get all the December, and we haven't done any accruals yet or anything. We just wait. I mean, we do that as part of the year-end process. But it was really more just to get you a sense of historically what we've been spending when you look at the budget. So, like I said, I've made notes, but I usually just open it up and see if there's any questions. For the water budget, I've made no assumptions. We have, as a placeholder, we just have 0% increase in the user fees. And then the discussion will be, like the purpose, we need to come out of this or the next meeting with what the fee increase is going to be for the water fees, the sewer fees, and the solid waste fees. The solid waste, well, we'll get to that, but it's a little more black and white because we have a contract and there is no labor charged there, so. But with the sewer and the water, we have to determine what the fee increase would be for this year. So is there any questions?
So let's start with Jamie. Everybody gets a kick at this.
Yeah, more just taking in information right now.
Mhm.
I've never seen anything like
Yes.
this, so.
Good.
Basically, we just show our sources of revenue, and then we show the expenses, and then we get down to basically kind of what the bottom line is. The one other thing I will explain, I've just started showing this in the last couple of years. Sometimes we have things we have to rebudget, so we budgeted them last year, so we taxed for it. We received money for it, and for a variety of reasons, sometimes it's time related, we didn't get them done, but we still need to do them. So we rebudget them. But the reason I show them, I have to include them in the expenses, but down below I show that we're drawing from surplus to pay for it. And the reason I do that is so we don't want to double tax. Like if I taxed last year for something and we don't get it done, then I have to include it in the budget because I'm required to budget for everything we spend. But then I show almost like as a source of revenue at the very line, draw from surplus for the rebudgets, and I've identified what those are. So that, that's just to be clear that we're not taxing again for it.
Jump in.
So if we were to talk about some sort of water sewer infrastructure survey, and with an eye on, let's say, a village-wide sewage treatment system, how would we develop some budget for that? So properly canvassing the entire village to see who's got failing systems, who's going to be spending $30,000, $40,000 to rebuild their field or their treatment plant, to get a sense of how realistic it is to get a system-wide or plant-wide, village-wide treatment plant. And this might not be the place for this conversation, but what I'm asking is, should we start thinking about what a survey like that would cost or gathering data like that would cost?
If I could answer for my view, I've asked a roundabout question to Pam, and she broke my heart when I saw her last night before volleyball. And I think there's a bigger issue here, and I can assure you that we'll be bringing this forward in the next month. And it's somewhat vague, but I think there's, we have a plant that probably needs some work. We need, the example being, people that write the check for 30 grand, are they prepared to write a check for 50 grand for universal sewage? Can we borrow for it? Can we borrow concurrently with our other infrastructure stuff? And I can tell you unequivocally, the answer is no. And that's just my back of the envelope thing. So I am working some numbers out with Pam, which will come forward in the next month or so, closer to budget time. I'm not trying to shut you down on this idea, Norm, but in my very brief time in this chair, the asks are many and the dollars are few.
Norm was mentioning, though, you were talking about a village-wide sewer system,
Yes.
though, weren't you?
Yes.
As opposed to just the need to
Replacement.
replace the Kelvin Grove
Exactly.
for Kelvin Grove, so that was a bit
What I
different.
was getting at is that's an involved exercise. You know, you'd have to seriously go to door to canvass people and come up with an intelligent questionnaire and collect data that has some weight to it and understand that it's a big dollar item that we're talking about. People are faced with this whether they want to know it or not. At some point in the next couple of years, your treatment plant's going to fail, or your field is going to fail, and you, depending on where you live, you might be faced with a really big bill. And that happens throughout the village. That's happening. People are either borrowing money against their house, or they're coming, or maybe they just have $50,000 lying around. But I think we might be getting to that point in time where more and more fields are failing.
Mhm.
So
I think that this, again, I'm not trying to be vague, but this discussion in the next 45 days is probably what's going to make you lose sleep at nights.
okay.
There's a big issue out there.
But that conversation,
Why,
needs to
why,
do with the
why,
budget and
why,
stuff like that.
why just not say it? What's the big issue? I mean, why are we?
Well, I mean, again, I'm waiting for the asset management plan, and to see what their report looks like. Staff doesn't know what it looks like
Right,
either.
okay.
So don't know whether this is part of it, and there's pieces of information we don't have. But if I was to put forward, and not me, but in the gray or all of us, if I just happen to push it to start it, if we're trying to cover our infrastructure shortfall, taking sewer out of the equation, I've done some preliminary numbers, and they're very big numbers, and I'm not sure we can accomplish that. So to compound the ask might be a real tough one here.
Right.
And that's, short of taking up chalk from the chalkboard, I can't give you any more on that just now. So it's really about what can we, the village, afford, and that still is a work in progress. Yes?
I think, though, that there is value to pursuing the information gaps that we have. And I don't see a survey being something that necessarily should cost a lot of money. Last year, the Infrastructure Committee discussed creating a survey and distributing it with the utility bill. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. But now that the committee appears to be revisiting that topic, you know, if you could get a list of questions that were probing and that could elicit the information that we need to know, and insert it with the utility bill, which goes out when, Pam?
In about 5 weeks.
Yeah. So time is short, and I think this is what happened last time, is ultimately there was disagreement as to what should go in that kind of a survey, and time seemed to be a factor, and it was dropped. But I think that's a conversation. Is it on the agenda for Thursday? Yeah. So you can talk about that on Thursday and decide whether or not, you know, that's something that's doable, but we would need a heads up as soon as possible so that we understand and can work to ensure that any such survey is in a format that will be compatible with the mail out that we send for the utilities, so that it's not adding immeasurably to the labor task that's involved with that exercise. So just to make it work as best as we can. But certainly, I think that if we have better understanding as to where people are at in their life cycles of their septic assets, that's invaluable information to know. Whether or not, you know, how we fund that kind of a proposition is obviously the $64 million question. But there are potentially opportunities that involve certain developments. And sometimes, you know, if a development is the right development for Lions Bay, but you know, a big roadblock is the fact that we don't have a sewer system capable of handling that development, then we may see an opportunity to address that situation, whether it's a new treatment plant or whether it's a sewage treatment system in a wider scope. And maybe it's not an all-at-once proposition. Maybe it's trying to get everything on the south side of Harvey Creek first. That's, you know, you've got a lot more in terms of gravity on your side trying to do that. And then, you know, anyways, there's different options that might become available. So I think to have the information is invaluable.
Yeah,
Just you guys looked at it all? I mean, I guess
The
it's
infrastructure,
technical.
sorry, Neville, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to probably just add to a few things. It's similar thoughts himself as well. So $30,000 to $50,000 is what everyone seems to spend every time they buy a home in Lions Bay now, because inevitably with the building inspection, septic systems failed. The other part you've got to remember is, not only have they all failed, but none of the designs that are in there meet the new regulations, right? So all the more modern systems actually can become quite well compact because they involve blowers and all the other stuff, right? Whereas in the old days it was just a big leach field. But if you take $50,000, you multiply it by 500 homes, you're certainly not going to get enough money to do. So there's certainly going to be some sort of staged, phased, and maybe it's some sort of thing that says when you buy a home you have to deal with this, or when you buy a home, or if you change your property, you have to actually buy into the program. Something like that. But over time you end up changing, but it will be a sizable funding exercise.
So the infrastructure master plan did look at a universal sewer system for the village. It went so far as to map out pipe locations. There would be pumping stations required. It's quite a costly process because not everybody would be able to gravity. That's assuming that Kelvin Grove is the location for the ultimate plant. So most of the cost and the information is in the infrastructure master plan.
You can get modular systems that you can add on to nowadays as well.
Yeah, and that's
We probably should move on. This is going to be a long discussion.
Yeah, so just quickly, the sewer treatment plant in Kelvin Grove is at 90% of its life. Most recently, the sprocket, chain gear, and gear reducer failed. So we've ordered that. That's about a $12,000 fix. But components are rusting, the tank is rusting. I'll be presenting an annual report at the next council meeting that talks about the plant and its operation. We need to commission a study to look at treatment options. And one of the things that we had been talking about was a modular plant that we can upsize, increase, and phase additions onto. So it is on the agenda, it's talked about, we're looking at it.
All right, gentlemen and Jamie, on this, we've kind of gone that way off Pam's financial report. So the booklets in front of us are fairly thick. If I could ask us to focus on the three budgets that we've got here. And we'll again start with Jamie if you've got any financial questions for Pam.
Not currently.
At this point, fine. Mr. B?
Well, actually, I have one, and sorry, but it's on the sewer section.
Okay, so I wasn't sure how you wanted to do this. We'd address water first, only because I think the advantage is nailing down and then kind of getting a sense of what you think the fee increase should be. And I am, yes, advocating for an increase in water fees, given the fact we know our infrastructure is failing. And we did have 0% last year, but I think, so maybe go through the questions, and then I guess that's what the discussion is going to be, what your sense is, what you would like, or what you think the increase in water fees should be this year. But were there any questions about any of the numbers, Neville?
The grant, am I reading this right? So have we spent $75,000 on the grant already in 2018?
No.
What
The
am I
grant
missing here?
gets tricky because of the delay in the project. So you have to sort of think of this as being cash basis. So when I did the 2018 budget, at that point, we hadn't tendered the project. We were thinking we would get a substantial part of the water tank done in 2018. So it's being funded partially by the grant, the loan proceeds, and then the capital, and that all nets to zero because that was the deal, that we could get funding if we got the other portion funded by grants. So if you take in the 2018 budget and the 2019 budget, if you take the CWF grant and go down below to the loan proceeds and then the capital, which includes the tank, that all nets to zero. So each year I have to sort of start fresh. So it's not like we got 2 million, now we're going to get 19 million. 2018, I've just sort of restated the numbers. So based on what we've spent, because we have spent money with AECOM having it designed, we have, although we received up front a lot of the cash for the grant, sorry, I'm probably making this more complicated than it is. I determine how much of the grant still we still have to spend, so to speak, even though some of it's in the bank. The loan, we received all of the loan a couple of years ago, but essentially because we don't use it, it flows to surplus, and then I draw it from surplus, and then we're going to spend the money on the tank. So this is just basically what's left after we've spent what we have with AECOM. So it's kind of a placeholder in a way. We've got the grant, the loan is the revenue, and that exactly equals what we're going to spend because we did not tax for the water tank. We had enough money. It was fully funded by the loan and by the grant. And because the project has been delayed and now we finally have a successful tender, our expectation is most of it, if not all of it, will be completed this year. So it seems like a big number, but it actually has no impact on the bottom lines. We've got 100% of revenue coming in through grant to pay for 100% of the expenses. And then the other grant, that was a grant we got for the Bayview project. It was a infrastructure grant. So we've received the grant. We've been awarded the grant, but they don't pay it until the design is finished. So that's going to happen in a couple of months. We'll be putting a claim in for that grant.
Okay. So you're suggesting we need an increase.
Well, although we are sort of
What are we spending more on than we did last year? It jumps out.
The reason I'm suggesting increase, we actually do have, based on this budget, we do have a surplus this year, but I think we'll find through the infrastructure plan that, you have to remember, this is a cash basis, so we take the depreciation out, and some municipalities, just as a rule, budget for their depreciation. But to put it in perspective, I've estimated our depreciation to be 212, but that's just based on last year. It will probably be a bit higher. If we were to tax to cover our depreciation, we'd have to have an increase of 15% in our water fees, which I'm not necessarily suggesting, but I think part of the problem we have this infrastructure shortfall is we haven't been budgeting to put money in reserves. We've just been covering what our actual costs were, and we haven't even been covering our depreciation. So with this budget, I am predicting budgeting a bit of a surplus, but I'm suggesting it should be a little bit higher. I think it sends the wrong message to have it 0% in water because it's making it sound like everything's okay, that we're covering everything we need to with our water fees, and we know we're not, because it's not just covering what it costs this year to do the water. We know we have to start putting money aside for our future infrastructure. Just the replacement of our existing infrastructure, actually. But in terms to answer your question, we actually didn't have any really large increases. The biggest was salary, but that's because of the increase in the, we had an additional public works person. Yeah. So last year, the budget only included half of the salary because we had anticipated hiring them half through the year. So now the full salary is in there. But other than that, there's just the the union contract.
So the question is, sorry,
yeah, okay.
So this is the 2019 budget. It's money
Yes.
we can spend in 2019.
Well, these are the expenses that I'm estimated and the revenue that I predicted.
You're talking about asking for more money, like with a tax increase. That money would have to be spent within the 2019 tax
Oh,
year.
no. All that money, plus this 87,000, it would go into reserves. It goes into it's surplus, and we would put it into reserves.
So how much money do we want to spend on water this year?
Well, that's what we're saying that this year our expenses will be 909,227.
That's all the projects.
That's just
that's
operating.
standard operating costs.
So sorry, and then down we have our capital expenditures, but the capital, most of that is the water tank. The only additional capital we have is, something else we have to talk about, is the infiltration gallery. We put $50,000 in the budget for that, and $7,500 for a pipe locator, and $2.3 million for the water tank. But
That's already all in this.
Yeah, it's in that $2.4 million that's down at the bottom. So for the magnesia infiltration gallery, I might pass this to the public works manager, but as you know, we received a grant for it. We've removed the infiltration gallery, so in terms of the grant, we actually have to pay back 2/3 of that cost or reinstall it. So the $50,000 is to reinstall it, but we haven't yet determined if there's a design that would be, would actually work. And then if we do spend that money to reinstall it and it doesn't work and we have to pull it out again, then we still have to repay the grant. So there's a cost there no matter
I think
what.
what I'm struggling with is I feel like we'd have to have the infrastructure master plan nailed down first before we can talk about how much money we want to raise.
Mhm.
The asset management.
You know,
Asset
Yeah,
management.
that's what-
You know, a point, I'm not pro or con, in fact, as I'd be happy, Pam's made her point, but I don't know that it's easy to plug a number in here. A point is $8,400, so this isn't moving a lot of mountains here. The 1%.
A 1% increase will get you about 14 grand overall.
No, but for
in
water.
water, it'll get you 8,400.
About
Yeah.
8,300.
So, I mean, this is, you know, it relative to us at our 20,000 foot level, this is not moving a lot of
In
needles.
terms of your question, that's what I was struggling with, because the utility bills go out in February. So we won't have time to absorb the whole asset management plan, but we're also not going to solve the asset management plan shortfall with one budget. It's going to be an ongoing thing. We'll have more of an opportunity to discuss it before the property taxes. So I guess what I'm saying, we know it's coming, there's going to be a shortfall. So even though I'm showing a surplus with a 0%, it doesn't even cover the depreciation. So I don't think there is any right number, but my recommendation is to have an increase in water fees. And I know we don't know what the asset management plan, what the shortfall is going to be, but we know we're
I just
facing a
feel
big
like an
bill.
increase is more palatable if it's tied to something specific. So you can say, you know, you're gonna see a 2% increase in your water bill to fund SCADA for Harvey intake, for example.
Mhm.
That's all I'm getting
Yeah.
at.
It's not there.
Okay.
This is just a number.
But on that point, how I would
That-
say,
that
because
increase the reserves, it's really what it amounts to.
Okay.
that's exactly what I would say in the utility brochure, that we've, you know, we know we have to, I think most people know we've advertised our infrastructure is failing, so we need to start building up our reserves. And a lot of municipalities have done that. I'll bring more information to that when we do the, when I'm working on the property taxes. But a couple of years ago, West Vancouver, they just have a 3% tax increase that just goes to their reserves. And more municipalities, I think Courtney just introduced a 3.7.
And Vancouver's
So-
2.5 before they
But,
start taxing.
So yeah, I agree with you though. I think it's really important that when we say you're getting your water bill and there's a 5% increase on it, we say what it's being used for. And that's why we don't just send the bills out. We always, so in this case, I think it would actually look better to say that we're thinking future forward, that we're actually starting to put money into reserves rather than we're just taxing enough just to pay for this year and we'll worry about future years later.
What's the date for the utility bills going up, Pam?
We usually like to have them mailed by the end of February. So.
End of Feb?
Yes, end of February.
Okay.
So working backwards.
Sorry.
No.
We talked about this all night, but I want to get going because we have a lot of stuff to go tonight. So, gonna leave it at 0, pick a small number. I don't see a big number here because to Norm's point, there's no substantiation why it would be. So, I mean, I'll start the bidding and just say, you know, I'd be fine with 2%. 2% means nothing
What do you
to,
recommend? And that's really your.
As
your
high
remit.
as you're comfortable going, because I think we're saying that there is something for it. I mean, you're talking about huge increases in property tax. Well, this is part of what funds, this is what funds our water infrastructure.
But to Norm's piece, we haven't thought it out yet. I can't articulate it yet, where I think I want to go.
But isn't the articulation just the fact that we need to start building up our reserves? It's a universal message across Canada right now. I think people would understand that if you said, we want to start building up our reserves, so.
Well, I think the hard fact is that with the instability of our water system, as we try to build up a reserve, mishaps happen. We have landslides and intake plugs and all kinds of stuff. If we put 2% in, that could be eaten up before June.
Well, it's an insignificant amount, to be candid, it is. But I think that we're in a catch-22 here. Pam's got a deadline where the bills go out. We don't know what we need because we haven't had the plan. Staff hasn't seen the stuff. And we haven't even addressed our massive infrastructure shortfall and everything else. So, I mean, it's a confluence of everybody going in a different, everything going in a different direction here.
Our water is free, right, essentially, or how does the cost of Lions Bay water compare to the cost of Metro water?
Highest in the
Ours
region.
already the
It's
highest in the region.
Yeah.
And the reasons are up there, people going up there, busted pipes, this, that. You've been on the IC enough that everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. And we're just a high-cost unit.
Well, we don't have economy of scale.
Well,
We're
with our
taking
labor
water from
force and all the rest of
greenfield
that.
channels.
So, you know, I think that And I can't see it meaningfully going down anytime.
I think we're all positive, we know for a fact it's not going to. I mean, I think to Pam's point, putting out a minimal or zero increase is like trying to tell people it's all right. We know it isn't. So that's a bad message. Might even be worse, it's a lie, effectively. If everyone else around us has taken this, bigger municipalities with obviously more people thinking about it, coming up with a strategy of doing increases just to put some extra into reserve for that rainy day, sounds to me like something that's palatable. And we should, I agree, we should do it.
And your number is?
I'm going to raise you on your 2 and go 3 to 5.
I'm fine with 5.
He sees your 5 and he bids higher?
No, well, no, this is not a jocular topic. I mean, we're kind of bantering here because we're collegial about this, but it is a serious deal. But, I go back to Norm's point and to what staff have told me. We don't know what we don't know, but we know that 0 is the wrong number.
Yes.
And, using $8,400, 5 times that versus 0 or 2 is better, and I actually think it's much easier to reflect the community.
You also have an infrastructure master plan that has a $30 million plan that we don't have money to fund. So there's your deficit right there, right? It's gonna get worse once the asset management plan comes out. So you do have a big number that we're not collecting or saving for.
The optics becomes difficult. Back to our earlier discussion, when you get an extra 5 points in, and for water, and then other stuff gets passed, budgets passed and approved on other things. I'm not saying the mayor doesn't need some. So that's the optic that becomes difficult to deal with. Yes, it's there to fund our reserves, and yes, it's because we could have a failure on a pipe or whatever, and we don't even have any money to fix it. The diligence has to be, that's what we did it for and what we're going to spend it for, and we may have to prove that, right? Demonstrate.
That's right. And actually,
So you're talking about 5% now, that's becoming a little more substantial, isn't it?
Yep.
So what is that, 60 grand?
40,000. 8 times 5.
It's-
Actually, no, closer to 50.
50 grand,
500.
okay, so
I think,
50 grand, could that make a dent in SCADA on Harvey, for example, and reduce our
Well,
labor costs?
we
Well,
bought this,
Harvey's already covered off by the grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
The SCADA to the intake, to reduce labor time up there, to reduce manpower up there. What I'm getting at is a $40,000 or $50,000 SCADA investment going to pay by loosening up
something.
staff time to do other things, right?
Your staff time is already booked through the core service review, right? So putting in a SCADA system, if it does save staff time, I don't see how one up at the intake would, because
Okay.
you
So maybe
physically
that's
have
not a
to.
good example.
But if you did have a SCADA system, let's say we had SCADA at all the PRVs, right? That's gonna cost you $25,000 a PRV. We've got 18, 20 PRVs. Is that gonna save time? Yeah, there won't be as many inspections, right? We won't have to go there as often. When we go there, it takes 3 people to check the pressures, right? Because of confined space. So that would save you time, but that time will be put
Certain
towards
areas.
our maintenance deficit that we already have, right? So we don't have enough manpower to do air valve checks. So if we save time on PRVs because we've dumped money into SCADA, then we'll move it to air valves. It's not gonna reduce the cost. There's always things that the staff can do, right? I don't know if I explained that properly.
Like, we won't suddenly, because we have SCADA, be able to reduce the hours of our staff. It won't flow to the
Yeah,
bottom line.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is if
It'd make us
there's,
more efficient.
more tangible investment, so we're doing something with water that's gonna reduce the load of our overall budget for
Yeah,
water.
yeah.
It's just, it's more.
Yeah, I think the message is
concept.
more, like, we're covering off the capital that we want this year. The message is where we have to start building up these reserves. But it's also for, actually, you made an excellent point. We need to have those reserves. I mean, I budget for what I can, but if something unexpected happens, we're not by law allowed to go into a deficit. So we have to draw from what little reserves we have to pay for emergencies, like in Kelvin Grove a few years ago, the burst water pipe. That was $300,000. It wasn't capital. So even if we could have borrowed for it, we can't borrow, we can only borrow for capital. So that had to come out of reserves. And so it is important to have those reserves in case something unexpected comes up. And then what would happen, you still have to get it in the budget, but then you would do a budget amendment. So we have the expense, but I have to get the funds from somewhere, so they have to come from reserves. So in a way, it makes this more stable, this whole, I think it's easy to sell the concept of building up reserves, because I think your point is excellent. You don't just say, oh, we've increased rates 5% and don't explain why. And I think we have some compelling arguments to explain why we're doing it, even though we may not have the whole asset management plan behind us yet, published to the public.
Gentlemen and Jamie, I suggest Neville's put 5, and then a little bit of cosmetics here. The solid waste is going to come in at 1.5 as Pam's recommendation, and I mean that's a straightforward. Trucks come, this is what it costs, so it's just a recovery.
Put that, it's like that's a $5 increase.
Yes, so it's $5. It's insignificant.
Nothing.
But the other one, the sewer's on for a 5% increase as well. So there's a certain sort of cosmetic thing here. If we're going to pick a number without really seeing the rest of the data and recognizing Pam's time deadline here. I mean, there's only so many meetings that we have. At the end of February, is that right, Pam, again?
Yeah, basically the
Okay.
next meeting, we don't have to do that if you're not comfortable with this, but I would bring first and second, third reading of the bylaw with the rate increases. But if you needed more time to think about it, we could talk about it at the next meeting, but then we would have to have a special meeting to do first, second, and third reading of the bylaw. So I don't want you to feel rushed, but at the same time.
So, well, in fact, we're not rushed. I mean, there's time here, but I think we've had enough on this discussion. But recognizing 2 key pieces here. Pam has a deadline. The raw data is here. The percentage of increases in all these variety of budgets is small. It doesn't really move the needle. And the elephant in the room, we can't really get a good estimate of until we see our asset management plan on the 7th of February. So we got 3 things happening at the same time and we're being asked to move now. I would be fine if there's a nod of heads, I'll put the move forward, that we ask Pam to go 5, 1.5, 5 on the 3 budgets in front of us. And we just use those ones for now. We can amend that they're going to be going to different readings. And as more information develops, we may change our thought.
Works for me.
So when say change your thought, I mean, once we say the 5 and we've done first and second, third reading,
Could be higher.
so you may change
It's
it
not
at the
going to
next.
be lower.
No, but, because there is a bit of a time, like
Well, I
2
know.
weeks is when I'm planning to bring first and second, third reading. That was what I was trying to explain. If you wanted more time to think about it, we could have another discussion at the next meeting, but in order to meet the deadline, we'd have to have a special meeting to do first, second, and third reading, and it's an option.
I think the idea is to go with 5, 1.5, 5, prepare that for next meeting.
Yeah.
If there's a change of heart at
No, I
that meeting,
understand.
they'll
Yeah.
require
Yeah.
another meeting.
Yeah.
But at this point, I don't see that until I don't know what I don't know.
That being
So-
said, though, I would like to present the sewer budget. And I know there is some time. I think this is pretty important, not to just, I just put 5 in as a placeholder because I wasn't comfortable doing 0. And I believe you had a question about the,
Well, I do. We
Sewer?
were talking about going to reserves in the water and everything, and I was questioning drawing 12 grand from surplus to offset the cost of the sewer, and I thought, I think I'd be more inclined not to draw that 12 grand from sewer and leave it in reserves, because sooner or later that tank's going to need a lot of work.
right. So in order to do that, our only other source of revenue is to increase the utility fees. So the history with sewer, we haven't increased the fees in about, well, since I've been here, in about 5 years. One of the reasons is, though, we tend to have a surplus most years. So we do have about a $200,000 surplus in sewer. Not enough to pay for a new sewer tank, but we do actually have that surplus. And the other thing to note is, although it's a $12,000 deficit, we have had, like I said, well, what I've just said, we've had surpluses in other years. But that's why I put the 5 in. I thought it was completely disingenuous to show 0. But 5 would be a $40 increase. Because unfortunately, a 1% increase in the sewer fees, because we only tax 85 people, this only gives us $680. So I don't know if we could cover that deficit with, it would be like a 35% increase if we tried to
If you took-
cover the deficit, but.
If you didn't drop the 12, that would make it a 35% increase.
Yeah, because the only way I can get that to
Oh, I
0
see.
is to increase the revenue. But the draw from surplus here isn't as bad, because with water, we're right on the border, but with sewer, we have never budgeted to put money to the reserves, but it just seems like we've always had a bit of a surplus, and the surplus flows to reserves. And then also the capital expenditure, I had just wanted to draw to everyone's attention. Nye had done a bit of a background on it, but it was the $15,000 to have SCADA hooked up from the sewer treatment plant to the public works yard.
Any question?
No doubt.
So you're saying that thing's close to the end of its useful life,
Yeah.
and we're gonna spend 15 grand to,
Yeah, so, there was a power outage in November, planned power outage, village-wide. Our visits to the treatment plant are once a month. At that planned outage, something went wrong with the flow meter. We weren't scheduled to go back there till the end of December, or till mid-December. When we did go back, we found out that the flow meter had fried because of the power outage. So we have had 1 month of data and problems with the plant that we didn't know about because we only visit it once a month. If we had it on SCADA, we'd see that error right away. We'd see any treatment issues right away. The negative side of not having that and having an episode like that could be an environmental fine and release of raw sewage. So I'm surprised it hasn't been put on SCADA ever in the past. It should have been when it was put in.
Isn't some of that purchase a non-sewer person here, but for the software, and that would be transferable? Like if we did have a new, or do we have to do it all from scratch if we had a new sewer treatment plant? I wasn't sure about that.
If you do it, it would be included in a new sewer plant. It would be part of it all.
Okay.
So, but having said that, we've got about, 5 to 10 years left on that plant, right? So if you amortize it over that length of time.
So, yeah, I know.
All right,
I
so-
just, if there are no questions, and yeah, so I have 5% as a placeholder. To put in perspective, it's a $40 increase for the year. We still have a deficit, so, and there's no right answer.
This
terms
is
of
the
what
first year
increase.
for a deficit in how many years?
Sometime.
In some time, yeah, sorry, I was just looking at the numbers, yeah, so we're gonna have a bit of a surplus last year as well, but of course, some of that's gonna be drawn to cover the rebudgets of the 7,100. Yeah, it's a little bit different here, because we've had surplus, and we have actually built up over $200,000 in reserves, so I'm not as uncomfortable drawing from reserves. It's a little bit different, because the infrastructure is smaller, like water. I would never want to run a deficit of water, but it's a little bit different having a deficit in sewer, because it's our first one in years, and we're really just drawing from money where you could almost argue we did overtax a bit in other years, because we didn't in the sense that our reserves aren't high enough, but we have never taxed to put money in reserves here, so it just happened to be that we came under budget, and a lot of that was because of the wages. We were allocating a bit too many wages to sewer. We had the best intentions of doing more work on sewer, but with the shortage of staff, it always got the short stick. So at the end of the year, we were always favorable in salaries.
Pam, thank you, and we really need to move on. So the recommendation is that the report 2019 draft water sewer solid waste budgets be received for information purposes. I'm going to expand that to ask the CFO to put forward the resolutions for increases of 5, 1.5, 5. Can I have a seconder on that? Any discussion, knowing that there will be discussion at the next time it comes forward? Double going, gone. Once, twice. All in favor? Done, thank you. Please tell us about the outdoor program.
Well, it is what you see. In order to provide the limited assistance that's been requested to help promote the preschool Saplings Outdoor Program as a segue to having kids stay in the public school system in Lions Bay, through advertising the services on our website and in the village update from time to time. We need to have a partnering agreement in accordance with the requirements of the community charter. So what you see before you is a draft partnering agreement which has been agreed to by Saplings, and it's very straightforward. Simply notes that what I just said is the in-kind services that we're going to be providing. There's no compensation involved, there's no money involved, and it lasts for 1 year, at which time we can revisit it.
All right, so the recommendation is that the partnering agreement with Saplings Outdoor Program Inc. be approved, subject to A, notice being published in accordance with sections 24(1)D and 94 of the community charter. B, publication of the notice being provided in accordance with sections 94(4) of the community charter through the village update electronic newsletter, which council considers to be reasonably equivalent to that which would be provided by a newspaper publication if it were practicable, and C, provision of an opportunity to be heard for any residents opposed to the proposed agreement. I will put forward that motion. You have a seconder. Any discussion? I would point this out that this is a pivotal piece in assisting our schools staying open, providing the daycare. It's part of our whole gig on this one, and as we've said to Peter, it's a preferred supplier, unlike the preferred automotive supplier or beer supplier of the village. This does not fall in that, nor would we entertain the latter. Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you, carried unanimously. Thank you, Peter.
And part two.
Oh. Also, the motion that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the partnering agreement subject to fulfillment of the conditions set out in the first resolution. Going to have the thank you, seconder. Any discussion? No, all in favor? Thank you, carried. Thank you, Peter. All right. Emergency program coordinator.
So my update on this is that that hasn't quite been finalized yet, and has to be sent to the union first to have agreement on terms and rates, and hope to get that out shortly to them so that we can get it posted.
Thank you. Any questions? I think this is good news. Thank you. Emergency management webinar.
So that's a webinar that's coming up on January 30th that staff will partake in with respect to implementing emergency notification systems. And so, yeah, we're plugged in and dialed, and we'll take part in that. And
looks like a good topic all around.
Yep.
Looks very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for both of those, Peter. Moving quickly along because we need to zip. The mayor's report. Meeting with Mr. Sturdy and Ms. Goldsmith-Jones. Mr. Sturdy's here. He's received my email that Peter's crafted and amended for me. Basically, it's the asks on our 5 grant issues. And he expressed an interest in being part of our village update received list. So we'll see where that goes. He's nothing further with him at this moment. Goldsmith-Jones, I'm meeting for coffee tomorrow morning. She'll get the modified version of what I gave Mr. Sturdy. And since she also is face-to-face, it's my view in both of these is to meet them face-to-face and do the hard asks. We need to win these grants. And, you know, being great pals and relationship building is all good, it really is, but we need to win. And the good news is that we're on a bit of a winning streak here, and another application's going out tomorrow. So we want to have them as invested as possible, and Peter did work until 1:30 last night on this one. The MP is prepared to give us a letter of recommendation for our beach park grant going out tomorrow. So their beavers are turning the wheel so we can have that for tomorrow. And thank you again for that, Peter. The application that's going out tomorrow, a lot of folks did a lot of stuff, and I'm sure we're going to be glad when tomorrow night comes and we press send and off she goes. Just lots and lots of work by staff, our volunteers. Just a lot of, I hope we win. And we're going to talk about that later. Okay, Councillor Village Update, articles. Thank you, Fred and Jamie. You did so well in your articles. I'm going to ask you to write again. Take your pen out. Fred, if you can do a follow-up article for March the 15th. Jamie, my aide-de-camp tells me that you got the most kudos for your article on the school, but I mean, you know, kid pictures, really? Come on. Come on. You know, if you could do a follow-up on March 29th, for March 29th. And
is mine February 15th?
March 1-5 for
Oh,
you,
March.
March 2-9 for Jamie. And it looks like, from what I've seen from the, I guess there's two levels of the school district. The executive are quite ecstatic that we're actually doing stuff. And the grassroots here at this school are double ecstatic. So I'm pleased with that we're showing some stuff, and we still have some more things to do. I'll make a note because there's stuff I have to deal with you with. Okay, so that's that. And Pam, you and your tax increases, are you going to do a little something in the thing, or are you going to leave that for the mayor to write on?
Well, I might just leave that for the mayor, with input from the CFO. He has a stronger voice.
All right, if you could give me
Yeah, we can talk about who
well,
would be more
I'll send you the
appropriate.
stuff.
I mean, historically, it's been the mayor. But
My, historically. Okay, good.
He's got the
I'm trying to shift this here, as you can tell. Okay, enough of that. So I'll send this off tomorrow for you and Peter to slice and dice. Thank you. Furry Creek, their folks are coming back into the country first week of February. I'm going to see them. Last I heard, they acquired the rest of their parcel, so they are the sole owners of the whole thing. North of 200 units. I don't know where their application for the development is, but we'll know, and that has repercussions for our school. And whatever we do with our work yard, should we ever get to that. Missing person on our behalf, I dropped a sympathy card off. I didn't meet the deceased's relative, but I could see that this person was dearly cared for from the wide variety of cards and flowers that were on the doorstep. Neville, you're gonna do LGLA conference in a second. Econ board representation. Mayor Little of District North Vancouver had his executive secretary try and flag us all down to get a meeting together. You got all this stuff, Peter, I think. And I wasn't sure, Fred, that's for you, whether, did we ask Fred to be the econ rep, or did I dream that in my dreams?
I hope you dreamt it, because so what this involves is the econ board representative is a position that's shared amongst the North Shore jurisdictions. For the last term, it resided with the District of North Vancouver, with Richard Walton. And so it moves around, everybody takes a turn. My understanding, and I have to go back and check notes and possibly refresh with Carl, but my understanding was that I think this is supposed to be Lions Bay's turn. We have received, we did receive an invitation it was sent out
The
to
three mayors.
each of the
Yeah.
mayors and CAOs to meet to discuss econ and representation. That was set for February 28th, but has since been canceled. So I'm not sure where that's going. So, yeah, we're not at liberty to simply appoint somebody without getting this question settled. So this needs to be settled before we kind of discuss who amongst council would be, because I'm not sure if it's going to land where I think it's supposed to land, but
You're thinking here?
yeah, I'm not sure.
I hope not. Okay. Then,
Okay, so perhaps that's.
Well, then, yeah, so then, I mean, they
perhaps
did the
that's
big huff about getting all together and, you know, put your stuff in here, and then they canned it, and.
Perhaps I could get some feedback on council's viewpoint on whether or not there is a sense that it would be important to fight for that board representation.
Before we give you their viewpoint for my benefit in 30 words or less, what do they do?
Econ?
Well, you would
Pretty
be
big deal.
the representative would be representing the 4 North Shore communities on the board of ECOM, and therefore responsible for all the things that a board member is responsible for any corporation. So you would be responsible for the direction of the organization and making decisions affecting the organization based upon, I presume, input that is provided by their staff to the board, much as we provide input and recommendations to council here. It's a complex organization providing emergency 911 service throughout Metro, but also has expanded to most areas of the province now, and I think provides probably about 80% of all emergency 911 service throughout the province. So it's a big
deal.
complex organization. It would be quite interesting, I'm sure, but yeah, whether or not the members of this council feel that it would be important for Lions Bay to assume that position, I don't know.
Why don't, just as a refresher, could you send, you've got the same emails as I do, and there was that one that did the big description of what it all was, of which I just gave Fred a copy, because I know you'd be deeply interested. For me, I'm on multiple committees, TransLink, Metro, and have different duties here. I could see the appeal of this, but I would be stretched time-wise for what I expect would be the case. Richard Walton, I think, has been doing this for the better part of 6 years that I can think of. And I mean, I've been to the Econ Center. It's a very cool place, and they really do good work. But so why don't you put the feelers out? And it would be fair to say this card that, you know, if somebody really wanted it, I'd be happy to say I support.
So do you want this back then?
Nope, you can hang on to it just in case you get
Can I?
tabbed. Oh, that's, I've just, it's yours.
I
You've
haven't-
got the same thing.
Yeah, I haven't read it though. So this will provide me a good place to start if you
Good,
don't
are
mind.
you, good. All right, so Ecom, the last, thank you, Peter, for your commentary on it too. Historical Society called me over the weekend. I guess they're coming up with their community grant thing shortly. I had spoken to them off and on for the last year. They're looking for something to do. They're thinking of doing a coffee table book to commemorate Lions Bay's 50th birthday. So don't know what that's going to look like, but that's just an information piece for you. And the last one for me is meeting Inspector Triance, who's the Squamish RCMP person for us to talk to. Just following up on the stuff that Peter said, we are going to meet with her. And if I could have nods at the table, this is, as he's explained to you, our part-time police force in the village. It remains a budget item, but if there's a reason somebody does not want us to talk about this, this would be the time to hold your hand up. So I'll do this the negative way unless there's a disagreement. We will continue to pursue this to the point we can we'll budget for it, have the discussion and see if they can actually provide us somebody. But the decision will be made at a later date. Fine?
Go for it.
Good, okay, we're done. And which takes us to the council. First Councillor Bain and then Councillor Abbott.
Hey, I've got about the community policing public information meeting. Just a quick shot here. Just had a few quick notes. The community police representative wasn't available, so 2 uniformed officers attended instead. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten their names already. They gave an overview of Lions-based policing provided by Squamish and mentioned some areas of concern such as a recent break-in at the post office. Possible suspects involved in that are identified, but charges have not yet been laid at the time of the meeting. But subsequent to that, the members emphasized the value of Block Watch and our Block Watch program, and the help citizen information passed on to them is in apprehending suspects. They mentioned any life-threatening or in progress suspected criminal activity should be called in on 911. Any other calls can be made via their non-emergency line, or if anonymity is preferred, call Crime Stoppers, but only if there is no life-threatening activities or criminal work. Residents participated in an open question period afterwards, and I estimated about 23 residents attended. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for those that didn't go? All right, thank you, Fred. Neville?
Okay, so the LG had a 2-day conference we went to. I think there was an email where it was suggested we should all come with 1 salary point. If you ask me to sit for 2 days through thinking you're going to get more than 1 point, I'm afraid. So I'll try to keep it to not more than 1 point per session, or thereabouts. The day one first session was kind of light. Jack Compton of Whistler described his first day in office by the fact that he signed a whole bunch of letters that were sent out to oil companies and, as he described them, oligarchs in Russia that create more oils and other fuels. And those that watch the news know that a few days later he was humbly on the news apologising to all of Alberta and asking them not to boycott Whistler. Made me think about this presentation we're going to have soon, and let's just be careful what we commit to sell to, because there's often unintended consequence and nothing really is free. So I'll just leave that, but it's quite an interesting discussion. The second session was a session on decision making. Tracy Forensen, if I can read my own writing, she was a really good speaker. She was very, very energized. If you ever get a chance to see her present something, she's really good. A couple of things that I kind of highlighted that I scribbled that she said, just kind of catchphrases. She told us we're not in the question business. Sorry, we're not in the answer business. We're in the question business. Which I kind of thought a little odd at first, but then as I thought about it, yeah, she's right. We're not here to get the answers, but we are definitely here to find out what the questions are from the people. She also made another statement about bylaws not being enforced. She said, if you're not going to enforce them, don't write them, you're wasting your time. So I think we should take some consideration into that. And then other kind of themes were don't major the minors and do the elephant hunting, raise the big issues. So it was an interesting session about giving me some insight as to what we expect to do as councillors. The next session on that day was a thing called We've Got to Stop Meeting Like This. It wasn't really what I thought it was going to be about. But there was a comment about public meetings. It was all about speaking order, those kind of things, which was fairly dry. But there was a thing about public meetings and preventing people from booing, clapping, and heckling. And explaining that many people can't respond when that in an environment comes like that, and you don't get to hear from anyone, and we should always try to shut that down. And the easiest thing obviously is shut down the first person that applauds you. So it was kind of interesting. The next session that day was on the rules of local government. It was about the community charter and various other things. Conflict of interest, of course, everyone's favourite topic. And the understanding, what I took away from this one is the common interest kind of rule around conflict of interest. I think that's one that we need to think of, and I think we have a few examples where we're going to have to deal with that in future from this council. When is it common, and when is your position different to everyone else's in the room, or less common? One statement that was made that I still struggle with is, if it's truly controversial, the chances are it can't be common. I'm not sure I completely get that, or they do understand what they're saying. Because a controversial discussion becomes a debate, so therefore, if it's truly controversial, you cannot be in conflict, I mean to say. So if it's truly controversial and there's that much debate, and that either side of it, the chances are you can join the debate, you're not in conflict. And that was one I never thought of, but that was a statement that was made. Session 5 on public meetings. It was kind of fairly dry by UBCM. One thing I highlighted in my notes here is freedom of information. Write the notes you wish to be revealed. So don't make a note. It can be taken, it can be received, or can be requested. Session 6 was municipalities and regional district. It was GVRD, how they set up. Pretty much factual. I didn't come away with anything there, other than I've got an understanding of how many sort of municipalities there are in different regions. And then the last session on the day was local government indigenous community. Once again, that was the Whistler Mayor that presented that. With a First Nations person. I didn't write too many notes. It's stuff I've done many times, detailed courses on that, so I didn't really write too many notes. But the one key thing is the duty to consult. We have a duty to consult with the First Nations. From what I know of what I've seen in our council minutes and stuff, I don't think we get much engagement, but it doesn't take away the duty to consult. That was day 1. On day 2, started the morning session was, what's the notes on that? Sorry, yes. The morning session was just introducing various organisations of support, MFA, MIBC, BC assessment, those kind of stuff, pretty dry. Not much there. I think we need to think about the second session was all about financial planning 101. I learned lots there. Also found out why we don't have balance sheets and income statements. We just call them something else. DCCs, development cost charges, very complex matter. And community contributions, one practice there. And one thing I took away with is that community contribution cannot be a fee, it has to be negotiated individually. That statement was made quite unequivocally. I even questioned it, but so that's maybe something we should think about. You can set out how you want to negotiate it, but it can't be a fee. So each time the other person has the right to negotiate whatever he wants for it, as well as what it can be used for. But that is a little more difficult to enforce. And then they also introduced density bonusing, which I didn't know about, which is doesn't really suit us. That's more about where you could, although it could be something that would involve us, I guess, is if we allowed increased density in the current zoning. Then there's the density bonusing, which is like community contributions, where you can use that, but once again, negotiated, one time, and it's a one-time thing. So those are things I think we'll be getting to hear about a little bit more in the near future. And Peter's obviously going to go see about that statement about not being a fee, because I can see you saying that he didn't necessarily agree with it. The next session in the morning was introduction to planning. I took copious notes on this. I'm not going to try to go through it with it now. Two things, OCP, lifespan, 10 years, 15 years max. I know we're not going to go there real soon, but at some point, if it's not towards this council, it's going to be the next one. OCP needs to be revisited at some point. That's the best practice. 10 years, should be no more than 10 years, 15 years max. DPAs came up. And one interesting that I've never heard before is that there's been some regulation, didn't come to write down what the regulation was, that allows council can now zone for tenure, although people haven't done this yet.
Sorry, say that again?
Council can zone for tenure.
Tenure?
Yes, which was never allowed before. But
did they give examples?
You have to do some research to find out. You have to do some research to find out why it came in. So basically, it's in more dense areas. It's about, and it's also part of the density bonusing thing. So built up areas. So you're going to tear down a tower block, and you want to get density bonusing. The council can zone tenure. They can say yes, but 25% have to be rental properties, or so many have to be. And that never used to be allowed in the law.
Yeah, so historically zoning has always been about land use.
Land use, yeah.
What is the use of the land, not who is using the land. So yeah, it is a recent introduction to change that so that you can zone in accordance with who is using the land, not just how it's being used.
The last session of the day was making media work. We referred to that earlier. I'd made no notes, and then I wondered why, and then I realised there was a handout that I'd scribbled all over and I hadn't got with me.
I'll scribble down too.
I don't know if anyone. I mean, it was a good session. How to take control of the situation. The media, using tricks like, yeah, can you send me that question? I'll get back to you right now. I've got to step into a meeting. Those kind of techniques, which not in his head, nice not in his head, which obviously in the sessions we learned about those kind of things. It was pretty interesting. The last session, when once again there was handouts and I didn't bring my notes, I signed up for an additional session that wasn't part of the LGA, but it was available, and it was Climate Action 101. And I didn't bring the notes with me. One big thing that I think is on Peter's radar that we need to be worried about is the new building code. And it was pointed out to me that all the municipalities around us have all made progress. I don't know what we've done, if anything. Bowen's about to go to step 2, Squamish is on step 1, North Van, all the big municipalities at step 3 already. And when I expressed concern about, we've got a lot to do in a small community, someone pointed out to me the one benefit we have is because everyone else is ahead of us is that probably all the trades have been trained. And that was the biggest issue that they had in places like New West and places that started it. Getting that through is that the skills aren't in the building trades to take these new codes and standards. And from that point of view, the fact that everyone else around us has got ahead of us is probably going to be beneficial. And I think there are some local builders that don't work outside the village much, but I think most of them would have been exposed to all this by stepping outside the village. So that was for one for me that I it's all been a fairly large amount of work. The whole climate action thing, and the climate action task force we used to have, it's kind of been shut down. Well, not shut down is not the wrong word. Doesn't seem to be as active as it was. Is maybe something we need to look at in later in the year or at a later stage. I think right now we've got enough on our plate, but I think there are some actions happening in other municipalities that, other than just the building code thing, that we need to keep abreast of and keep up to speed. That was it.
Good, and thank you very much. There's a lot of good takeaways, you're right. Yeah, well, thank you very much for that wholesome overview. Okay, if we can move on then. So it will be committees, there are none. Emergency services on page 89. We've got the RCMP's monthly report. Can I have a motion to receive this? Second, thank you. Any discussion? There being none, motion to receive, all in favor of receiving? Thank you. There are no resolutions. If we could go to the first bylaw up, the notice enforcement on page 91. And Peter, this is Dear to Your Hearts. Actually, we're lucky to have that one.
So no changes since the last time. This would be for adoption.
So what that means on page 93, where the little 3 X's are, this is last chance to do anything before we have to do a bunch of legislative things to reverse what we did. Okay, so just to go, recommendation is that bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 385, 2006, amendment bylaw number 2, I think of these things every night when I go to bed, number 255, 2018 be adopted.
555. 555.
555. There you go. Thank you. Can I have a motion on, thank you, Fred, a seconder. Any discussion? Everybody can see the very small amount of changes that are obvious. Double last ask on questions. Discussion. You gotta love a good bylaw. Okay. Motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Soil deposit, soil removal, and land alteration on page 123.
Peter. Well, again, no changes from last time. This is for adoption. The change that was implemented was
one on 127, and that was
adding the inclusion of other material as well as soil.
pretty straightforward. So the recommendation that the Village of Lions Bay soil deposit, soil removal, and land alteration bylaw number 510, 2018, amendment bylaw number 556 of 2018 be adopted. And I have a motion. Thank you. A second. Thank you. Any discussion? Last call. No questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we are at number 11 on page 143, and I can tell you that for Councillor Abbott, this will be your last correspondence since your quarter is over, and it goes to Councillor Bain next month.
Oh, that's good news.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, general correspondence. The first one, Metro Vancouver nominations for membership to Metro. Still there next to that, no action. And I think I'll just leave it at no action as requested or required.
Thank you.
The second one, the G2 Avalanche Safety, page 4, I've written down, congratulations, no action required.
Thank you.
And the Gas Tax Agreement, Community Works Fund, Gas Tax Fund, page 5, I think we can say thank you.
Thank you.
And F1 in response to rural dividend program.
This is part of the, for Mr. Sturdy and Goldsmith Jones, pushing us to get into the pack. So it's an NR, but it's being worked on.
Okay. So, so what, there's a statement about a next sixth intake. So this is when. It doesn't say when, so I'm not sure what the urgency is in here, of course, anyone needs to be. Sorry, bottom of the page of the letter, following completion of the program, the Ministry will review final findings, recommend and implement revisions to the program in advance of the next sixth intake period. And encourage you to monitor the program for updates. Does anyone know?
Actually, that was my note. Peter, when is the sixth application intake period?
I believe it'll be, I don't know that it's been announced yet. It'll be coming up in the spring. But it will be, they're undertaking a review right now of the program, so they're going to finish the review, make whatever changes they make, if any. Hopefully a change that they will make is that they will allow us to apply permanently, if not temporarily. And yeah, so we're just waiting to find out where that lands, and but I don't know when the actual date of intake will be. I don't think it's been announced.
Okay, so this brings the question to mind, the wood fire thing. So Bowen is got exemption from it, as do Electoral District A, Belcarra, and Enmore if they choose, because they are outside of the urban demarcation zone. Which way does it go? And we are not. Is it possible that that would factor into this?
Sorry, I'm looking at the
I know
page 6 of the.
Yes, I know that. And it says eligibility requirements will be examined as part of the program review process. Is the fact that we are not part of, or we are considered urban, not rural, as our definition in Metro, unlike Bowen or Enmore or Belcarra?
Enmore and Belcarra don't have exemptions for this program.
No, not for this program.
Right.
Sorry, I'm joining two things together.
Right, the wood burning.
The wood burning thing.
Yeah, right.
They are all eligible for exemptions. We are not.
I didn't know that.
Because of the map demarcation, that we are urban. There's three reasons you can be exempt. First, to a personal, you haven't got enough money and you have no resource. The third one is you're outside of the zone. They're done, don't have to worry about wood burning. We aren't, we do. When I heard that, I thought, does that same ruling, could that same map zoning that we are out of affect this eligibility? And just heads up, is it possible it comes out the same way and everyone else is entitled and we not because of that? Brings a much bigger question that we're not going to try to discuss now about urban versus rural.
It may well have been a factor that Bowen pointed to when they argued for eligibility for this program, the rural dividend fund. They also had other factors that were, I think, more weighty, including being part of the
Island Trust thing?
Yeah, the Islands Trust, and essentially having an OCP that is governed under that legislation. In terms of Enmore and Belcarra, their arguments to be eligible for this program would be similar to our own. If they are differently designated, however, urban versus rural on the map designations, they may have a leg up that I wasn't aware of. So that perhaps is something that we need to look into further. And I don't see that an urban designation in Metro's 2040 document provides us with any benefits, but that would be something that would have to be examined closely before lobbying to have that changed, or arguing at the Metro Board to have that changed. I think that a first step might be for me to gain a better understanding as to how that came to pass by talking to Metro planning staff and trying to determine how they came to that conclusion, but not that conclusion for Enmore and Belcarra would be interesting to know.
Okay. In correspondence with a councillor at the time, and this is prior to even your terms, I believe, we requested it.
Yeah. And was there a rationale for that?
Regional context, wanting to promote development, you can have it both ways. So I think it's a big question, it's a much bigger question that opens up our OCP, does a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
But if you look at the urban demarcation zone map, and I think I might have those words slightly mixed up again, but you'll find it's pretty clear. You can see there's a black line as to which areas are, and where this little pocket in this area that isn't.
Right.
Okay, well, I can tell you that this is on Peter's radar, because it's on my radar, and we're beating the MP and the MLA up for it, so.
Well, in terms of the grant program, I think the discussion that we just had about the urban versus rural designation under Metro's 2040 document is something that requires a little bit of some thought, first of all.
Yeah.
Let me take that under consideration and think about what potential options or actions might be considered. But I'll come back to you all with something
I'll
before
see,
doing anything.
I've seen both, well, I sit right beside both of the mayors on Thursday at TransLink. I certainly, for Belcarra, it's not top of mind. I mean, they've got a whole bunch of other problems. And Anmore, I'm not sure it's top of mind for them either, whether they're.
Oh, no, I'm sure they're not thinking about
No.
this. Is something, though, that we might want to take a close look at in terms of how is it impacting us? Well, is it impacting us? If so, how? What are the pros and cons of having the current designation? Would we be better off with a rural designation under Metro?
Good.
So those are all things that could be explored somewhat.
Okay, so we'll probably see that in the next minutes, and that'll get carried to the unfinished business, probably. Neville, please continue.
Okay, where do I get to? Page 8. Sorry. And this one is Sean's message on, what have I written here? This is the ride-hailing service?
Yes.
Yes, okay, this is the ride-hailing service. I'm not sure what action Canberra should be taking. I think it's something that could have an impact on those of us that commute in this community. I didn't, when I read through this, I didn't see that there was a request for an action from anyone, or nothing came to mind. Are you aware of anything coming out of this that we need to look at or be aware of? Or?
Well, there was an invitation on the last sentence on page 9 of it.
Oh,
I'm not sure what the invitation really was.
yeah. Well, do you think we look forward to having
They're asking,
look forward to your participation? So,
the 4 questions outlined in the body at the beginning
yeah.
by February 1st to respond to those. Just,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, you've got that. So yes, so who should respond to this? I guess I'm asking openly because I don't know. Or is it some sort of collaborative effort?
Or do you want to invest in this?
Do we want to invest in this?
Well, time and effort to do this.
Yeah, do we, okay, I guess the question is there anyone here that feels strongly enough that they want to invest some time into it? I think generally, for all those who commute, it's something we would like to see, probably like to see happen, I would think. but how much initiative do we have to take, or do we just hang on everyone else's shirt tails and hope they succeed? I personally don't intend to put my hand up because I couldn't do it justice.
I'm of the same view for me too.
As much as I'd like to see someone else
So
do it.
I'm not going to offer staff to do this. So that leaves the three of you, which I'll give you 5 seconds to shoot your hand up. And, you know, this is a decent kind of thing, but what I'm looking at is two folks at work and really don't have the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I feel strongly about Ride to Payless, but I don't know how.
Norm?
Uber's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
That's
It's
coming.
coming.
We don't need to.
That's all I can say.
Good. Can we
Someone
go
else will
with,
take care- no, I'll give- someone else will take care of it
with
for us.
nods, we'll pass. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Fred and I found out about Papa Ride anyway from one of the Squamish councillors. So.
I'll try.
Papa Ride. It's a ride sharing service. Just Google it when you leave here, and you actually can schedule rides. It just says it costs her $8 to go from Squamish to downtown Vancouver.
Level G6.
Okay, so my highlight here when I started reading this was too late, because we were supposed to do something by January 18.
It's too late.
So we missed the deadline, so it's good reading, and if we had to cancel a meeting, we might call it.
Thank you.
G7 on page 13, this is the John Povell. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Written down, yes. And my comment earlier, are we going to get that presentation coming to us soon?
Good, thank you.
And a comment earlier about what happened in Worcester. Keep our eyes open. G8 International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. I didn't see any action there.
Nope.
Just a heads up. Sorry.
Sorry, can I
Go back to.
speak to that?
Yep.
Okay, so
Please do.
what this involves is an organization called CCMARD, which stands for, sorry,
Second line, on the first page.
second line, first page. Not on my first page.
Canadian Commission for UNESCO.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I've jumped a bit, my mistake.
Yep, that's, Canadian Commission for UNESCO. Sorry, not quite. For racial discrimination, for elimination of racial discrimination. Anyways, there's a Elimination of Racial Discrimination Day. The CCMARD is an organization that's connected to UNESCO. We are a member of this organization apparently since 2007 when former Mayor Wyman joined and was actually a director, I think, on the board, and helped promote the objectives of the organization. It is through our application to create a biosphere region in Howe Sound, it is connected to efforts being undertaken by Ruth Simons. So she has some tangential interest in this topic. Other objectives include reaching out and so there's different programs with different opportunities to pursue the objectives of Elimination of Racial Discrimination Day. And so Ruth has actually submitted a municipal grant application. Not sure that she needed to do it that way, but long and short of it is she would like to organize and is looking into organizing an event that would be taking place at Broughton Hall on March 21st. That date might change. She's not sure whether that date's going to work, but tentatively has it set for that date. And it would include an invitation to Squamish Nation and to come and it would be an opportunity to engage and have featured speakers for the Squamish Nation, as well as some storytelling and dialogue, Syrian refugees and new residents from afar. So the community gathering would be based on a dialogue on belonging, highlighting the village's commitment against discrimination and racism. So Ruth is looking for some indication, without getting into her grant application, but some indication that council would support this initiative, which would involve essentially waiving fees associated with booking the hall, including staff time to set that up. In terms of her grant application, yeah, she's got a draft budget here. Sorry.
Sorry, and FYI, it's the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination.
There we go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think it's just in kind in terms of support. Anyway, some indication from council as to support or not for this initiative, so that she knows whether or not to continue to pursue or not.
I would be in support of
I think for
Yeah.
the hall and what I believe is minor staff time, and she does her grant thing when she does it. I think we could give a pretty firm green light on that one. Nods, Fred, yes, Norm, fine. Okay,
Okay, I
yeah,
can.
well, let's close out before we have to
Yeah,
extend.
so the next one's Premier's Awards for Excellence in Education. I'm going to ask Jamie if she's had a look at that and thinks there's anyone we should be nominating from our community as a promotional kind of thing or other.
I could,
You've got until the 31st of March.
yeah, I'll have an consult with the PAC chair and see what they recommend.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll leave this with you guys, and if it comes back, it comes back. If not, we're done.
Okay. And then the last one is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. This is basically an introduction of FCM's goals and priorities. I don't believe reading this, we were asked to comment. And what impact they have on us, there's nothing specific I wouldn't think, but clearly more generalities, but didn't see in action. Unless there was one that I missed or Peter wants to comment.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're done on that one, and the last one, that's the reply to Mr. Baker, so we're good there.
Yep.
Thank you, Neville, for your brief but very succinct time handling the correspondence, and you've set a bar for Councillor Bain to reach. Thank you. There is no new business, and because we already dealt with it, there is no public to ask any questions, and that's a wonderful thing. And we are down to closing council, and can we jump the gun at the same time and get us an extension for our in-camera meeting? So,
Yes, good idea regarding the extension, but before we go with the
Oh, yes.
whole hog
Yep.
motion
Thank
to
you.
close on everything, I would recommend that council consider a motion to close the meeting based on section 91N, which is considering whether or not an item ought to be discussed in closed or in open. So that would be the only basis upon which we would initially close the meeting. If we come back to, actually we can close based on all of the items, but consider N, the item under N first when we're in closed. So we could proceed with the motion as written, as amended, with adding sub A and sub N, along with the motion to extend the meeting
For an hour, until 11, I guess, that's okay. Okay, so everybody's clear, so if you're looking at your agenda, page 4, we've added in, for 14 closed, for all letters that go with it, we've added A, and we've added, which is personal, and N, which is Peter's just explained, and we've seen an email on this, so have a motion to close and go in for these reasons. Thank you. Second. And we are...
And that's including the motion to extend?
And to extend till 11. Thank you. Good. Thank you. And we are closed.